The lantern flame flickered against the barn walls as Olivia Lancaster pushed open the heavy wooden door, expecting to find her mare restless from the storm that had blown through Helena, Montana, earlier that evening. Instead, she found a man sprawled across the hay bales in the corner, his dark hat pulled low over his face, his chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm of deep sleep. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she raised the lantern higher, illuminating worn leather boots, dusty trail clothes, and a gun belt slung across broad shoulders. October 1884 had brought nothing but trouble to her doorstep, and now this. She cleared her throat loudly. The stranger stirred but did not wake. Olivia moved closer, her practical nature warring with the fear that made her palms sweat against the lantern handle. She had run this ranch alone for 2 years since her father passed, and she had learned to handle unexpected situations with a firm hand and a loaded rifle. Speaking of which, she should have brought hers from the house. "Wake up," she said sharply, her voice cutting through the quiet barn. "You are trespassing on private property." The man jerked awake, his hand instinctively moving toward his gun before he seemed to register where he was. In the lantern light, Olivia saw a young face, maybe 25 or 26, with several days of stubble darkening a strong jaw. His eyes were the color of stormy skies, gray and turbulent, and they fixed on her with an expression that held equal parts wariness and exhaustion. "Easy," he said, slowly raising his hands to show he meant no harm. His voice was rough with sleep and something deeper, a bone-weary fatigue that seemed to radiate from every line of his body. "I am not here to cause trouble." "Then what are you doing in my barn?" Olivia kept her distance, grateful that the lantern light probably hid the trembling in her hands. She was 23 years old and had faced down plenty of difficulties since her father died, but confronting strange men in the middle of the night never got easier. The cowboy sat up slowly, running a hand through dark hair that fell past his collar. He looked at her with those unsettling gray eyes, and she saw something break in his expression, a crack in whatever armor he had been wearing. "I had nowhere else," he said simply. The words hung between them, raw and honest. "I have been riding for 3 days straight. My horse threw a shoe about 5 miles back, and I walked here following the lights from your house. I just needed a place to rest for a few hours before moving on. I did not mean to alarm you." Olivia studied him in the lamplight. His clothes were quality once, she could tell, but they had seen hard use recently. Dust covered every surface, and there was a tear in his shirt sleeve that had been inexpertly mended. His gun belt was well maintained, the leather oiled and cared for, which told her he was not some drifter who had let everything go. Whatever had brought him here, he had been something more before. "What is your name?" she asked, still maintaining her distance. "Xavier Thompson," he replied. "And I give you my word, miss, I am not a danger to you. I will leave at first light if you want. Just let me rest here until then." Something in his voice, in the weary honesty of his words, made Olivia lower her guard slightly. Her father had always told her she had good instincts about people, and those instincts were telling her this man was not a threat. Tired, desperate maybe, but not dangerous. Still, she had learned to be cautious. "Why were you riding for 3 days straight?" she asked. "What are you running from?" Xavier's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he would not answer. Then he sighed, the sound heavy with a burden she could not yet understand. "I am not running from the law if that is what you are asking. I worked as a foreman on the Riverside Ranch down near Virginia City. The owner died last month, and his son took over. The son decided to let half the hands go, myself included, with only a week's pay despite the fact I had been there for 5 years. I have been looking for work, but every ranch I stop at either has a full crew or cannot afford to take anyone else on. I was heading north toward the Canadian border, thinking maybe I could find something up there. Olivia felt a stirring of sympathy despite her caution. The territory had been hit hard by a particularly brutal winter the year before, and many ranches were still struggling. Finding good work was not easy, especially with more men than positions available. She knew she should tell him to spend the night and then move on, but instead she found herself saying, "Are you good with horses?" Xavier looked up at her, surprise evident in his expression. "Yes, miss. I can break and train them, handle foaling, treat common ailments. I grew up working with horses. And cattle. I have managed herds up to 500 head. I can handle everything from branding to driving to winter feeding." Olivia made a decision that probably would have shocked her more cautious neighbors. "I have 100 head of cattle, 12 horses, and more work than I can handle alone. I lost my last hired hand 2 months ago when he decided to try his luck in the gold fields. I can offer you room and board plus $30 a month if you are willing to work hard." Xavier stared at her as though she had just offered him the moon. "You are offering me a job, just like that. You do not even know me." "You said I had nowhere else," Olivia replied, surprised by her own boldness. "I am saying you belong here, at least for now. I need help and you need work. It seems like a fair arrangement to me. But I need someone I can trust, Mr. Thompson. This ranch is everything I have left of my family, and I will not tolerate theft or laziness or drinking." "I do not drink, miss," Xavier said, getting to his feet. He moved stiffly, and she noticed him favor his left leg slightly. "And I promise you, if you give me this chance, I will prove myself worth your trust." "What do I call you?" "Olivia Lancaster," she said. "And if you are working for me, you should call me Olivia. Miss Lancaster was my mother." She gestured toward the barn door. "Come up to the house. You look like you have not eaten in days, and if you are going to start working tomorrow, you need a proper meal and a real bed. The hired hand's cabin is out back. It is small but weatherproof." Xavier followed her across the yard to the ranch house, a sturdy structure her father had built with his own hands 20 years ago when he first claimed this land. Inside, Olivia lit more lamps and pointed Xavier toward the kitchen table while she stoked the stove and began pulling out supplies for a meal. She was acutely aware of his presence in the room, this stranger who had appeared in her barn and whom she had just hired based on nothing more than instinct and desperation. As she fried eggs and thick slices of ham, sliced bread and cheese, and put coffee on to boil, Xavier sat quietly at the table. She could feel him watching her, and when she finally set the plate in front of him, she saw genuine gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I cannot remember the last time someone showed me kindness like this." "Do not thank me yet," Olivia replied, pouring coffee for both of them. "You have not experienced one of my work days. I will warn you, I do not believe in coddling, and I work alongside anyone I hire. We start at dawn." Xavier ate like a man who had indeed been skipping meals, but he maintained his manners, and Olivia found herself reassessing him with every passing minute. He was educated, she could tell from the way he spoke. He had been raised with proper etiquette, but had clearly spent years working hard physical labor. There was a story here, one she found herself wanting to know. "What brought you to Montana?" she asked, settling across from him with her own coffee. "Originally, my father had dreams of starting a ranch. We came out from Ohio when I was 15. He bought land, built a small cabin, and then got sick the first winter. He died before spring." Xavier's voice was matter-of-fact, but Olivia heard the old pain underneath. "My mother and I tried to make it work, but we lost everything. She eventually went back east to live with her sister. I stayed because this was the only home I really remembered. I have been working ranches ever since." "That must have been hard, losing your father so young," Olivia said softly. "We all have our losses," Xavier replied, meeting her eyes. "Your father, I assume, is the one who built this place?" "Yes, William Lancaster. He came out during the gold rush in the 60s, but he was smart enough to see that real wealth was in land and cattle, not digging holes in the ground. He met my mother here, married her, and they built this ranch together. She died when I was 12. Fever. My father taught me everything about running this place, but then 2 years ago his heart gave out while he was checking the north pasture. I found him at sunset." She had not meant to share so much, but something about Xavier's honest recounting of his own story made her want to reciprocate. "I am sorry," Xavier said. "It cannot be easy, a woman running a ranch alone in this territory. You must face a lot of skepticism." "Skepticism I can handle," Olivia replied with a slight smile. "It is the men who think I need a husband to manage things that try my patience. I have turned down 4 proposals in the last year, all from men who were far more interested in my land than in me." Xavier grinned, and the expression transformed his face, making him look younger and less burdened. "Something tells me you can handle those types just fine." "I have a very effective way of discouraging them," Olivia admitted. "I set them to mucking out the stables, and then explain in great detail all the challenges of ranch management, until they find an excuse to leave." Xavier laughed, a genuine sound that made something warm unfurl in Olivia's chest. "Clever. I promise not to propose to you then." "I appreciate that," Olivia said, though she found herself smiling. "Finish your food and I will show you to the cabin. We have a full day ahead of us tomorrow." The cabin out back was indeed small, just one room with a bed, a stove, a table and chair, and some basic shelves. But it was clean and dry, and Xavier looked at it as though it were a palace. "This is more than I expected," he said, setting his saddlebags on the table. "Thank you, Olivia. I will not let you down." "See that you do not," she replied, but her tone was gentle. "Good night, Xavier." Back in the main house, Olivia lay awake for a long time, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake or the best decision of her life. Only time would tell. But as sleep finally claimed her, she felt something she had not experienced in months, a small flicker of hope. Dawn came cold and clear, the Montana sky turning from deep purple to pale gold as Olivia made her way to the barn. She found Xavier already there, examining the horses with a practiced eye. He had cleaned up, she noticed, shaved and changed into a slightly less dusty shirt. He looked better with rest and food in him, more solid somehow. "The bay mare has a stone bruise on her left front hoof," he said without preamble. "Nothing serious, but she should be rested for a few days. The sorrel gelding needs his shoes reset, and that paint in the corner stall has the start of thrush in his back hooves. When was the last time someone cleaned them properly?" Olivia felt a flush of embarrassment. "I have been doing my best, but I admit I am better with cattle than horses." "My father was the real horseman." "No judgment," Xavier said quickly. "You have been handling everything alone, but if you let me, I can get them all back in top condition. Do you have a farrier you use, or do you want me to handle the shoeing? You can do farrier work." "I apprenticed with a blacksmith one winter when work was slow. I am not fancy, but I can handle basic shoeing and simple metal work." "Then the forge is yours," Olivia said, impressed despite herself. "Now come on. The cattle need to be checked, and I want to show you the lay of the land." They spent the morning riding the boundaries of Olivia's property, 300 acres of grassland and timber that spread across a valley floor and climbed into the foothills. Xavier asked intelligent questions about water sources, grazing rotation, and winter preparations. He had a sharp eye for potential problems, pointing out a weak section of fence and a drainage issue that could become troublesome come spring. "You have good land here," he said as they paused on a ridge overlooking the main pasture. "With proper management, you could easily expand your herd." "That is the plan," Olivia replied. "My father always said this land could support 3 times what we have now, but it takes capital to expand, and money has been tight." "What if you focused on quality over quantity?" Xavier suggested. "Instead of just increasing numbers, you could develop a reputation for superior breeding stock. Ranchers are always looking for good bulls and proven bloodlines. You could charge premium prices." Olivia turned to look at him with new appreciation. "That is actually a very good idea." "How would we go about it?" "First, we evaluate what you have now and identify your best animals. Then we look for opportunities to acquire superior breeding stock, even if it is just one excellent bull to start. Within a few years, you would have offspring that would attract serious buyers." They talked strategy as they rode back to the ranch, and Olivia found herself energized by Xavier's knowledge and enthusiasm. He was not just a hired hand, she realized. He was someone who understood ranching on a deeper level, who could see potential and plan for the future. The question was why he had been only a foreman instead of running his own operation. As if reading her thoughts, Xavier said, "I know I could probably have saved enough to buy my own land by now, but I kept sending money back east to my mother. She remarried eventually, but before that she struggled. It seemed more important to help her than to chase my own dreams." "That says a lot about your character," Olivia observed. "Or my lack of ambition, depending on who you ask," Xavier replied with a self-deprecating smile. "The new owner at Riverside certainly made it clear he thought I was a fool." "The new owner at Riverside is clearly an idiot," Olivia said firmly. "His loss is my gain." Over the following weeks, Xavier proved himself worth every penny of his wages and more. He repaired fences, treated the horses' ailments, rebuilt the sagging corner of the barn, and worked from dawn until well past dusk without complaint. But more than his work ethic, Olivia appreciated his company. In the evenings, he would often join her on the porch after supper, and they would talk about everything from ranching techniques to books they had read to their dreams for the future. "Did you always want to run this ranch?" Xavier asked one evening in late October as they watched the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. "Not always," Olivia admitted. "When I was younger, I thought I might become a teacher. I love reading, and I thought it would be wonderful to share that with children. But after my mother died, I realized how much my father needed me here. And then, somewhere along the way, I fell in love with this land, with the work, with the life. I cannot imagine doing anything else now." "You would have made a good teacher," Xavier said. "You have patience and a way of explaining things that make sense. What about you? If you could do anything, what would it be?" Xavier was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, I would want exactly what you have. A piece of land to call my own, a herd to build, a home that means something. I used to think about it all the time when I was working for other people, imagining what I would do differently, how I would run things. But it always seemed like an impossible dream." "It does not have to be impossible," Olivia said softly. "You are still young. You have time." "I am 26, Xavier replied. "Not exactly ancient, but not as young as I used to be either. And starting from nothing takes more than just time. It takes capital, opportunity, and honestly, a fair amount of luck." "Then maybe you should start looking for all 3, Olivia suggested. But even as she said it, she felt an uncomfortable tightness in her chest at the thought of Xavier leaving to pursue his own dreams. In just a few weeks, he had become essential to the running of the ranch. More than that, he had become her friend, the first real friend she had had since her father died. November brought the first serious snow, and with it, new challenges. Several cattle had wandered into the high country and needed to be brought down before they became trapped by deeper snows. Olivia and Xavier spent 3 hard days in the mountains, camping rough and pushing the stubborn animals back toward the lower pastures. It was exhausting, cold work, but Olivia found herself enjoying it more than she should have, simply because Xavier was there. On the final night, as they huddled near their campfire with the horses picketed nearby and the last of the recovered cattle bedded down for the night, Xavier suddenly said, "I need to tell you something." Olivia looked up from the coffee she was heating. "That sounds ominous." "It is not bad exactly, but you deserve to know." Xavier poked at the fire with a stick, not meeting her eyes. "When I first came to your barn, I was not just looking for any work. I was specifically heading to Helena because I heard there might be foreman positions opening up on some of the bigger spreads north of town. I had letters of recommendation, plans for how I would present myself. I had it all figured out. So why did you stay with me instead?" Olivia asked, though her heart was beating faster. "Because when you offered me the job, when you said I belonged there, it was the first time in 5 years anyone had made me feel like I was more than just hired help. The Riverside owner, the ranch before that, they all saw me as a useful tool, nothing more, but you talked to me like an equal. You trusted me with important work, asked my opinion, treated me with respect." He finally looked at her, and the firelight reflected in his gray eyes. "I make less money working for you than I would have as a foreman on a big spread, but I have something better. I have a place where I actually want to be." Olivia felt warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the campfire. "I am glad you stayed," she said quietly. "I do not think I realized how much I needed help until you arrived. Not just with the work, but with everything. It has been lonely, running the ranch by myself, making all the decisions alone. Having someone to share it with, even if you are technically an employee, it makes all the difference." "I do not feel like an employee," Xavier admitted. "I feel like a partner, even though I know I have no actual stake in the ranch. Is that presumptuous of me?" "No," Olivia said. "No, it is not, because that is how I see you too, a partner." They held each other's gaze across the fire, and something shifted between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been building since that first night in the barn. Neither of them spoke it aloud, not yet, but it hung in the air like the smoke from their campfire, visible and undeniable. The next morning, they drove the cattle down to the home pasture, and life returned to the normal rhythm of ranch work. But something had changed. Olivia found herself watching Xavier more, noticing the way he moved with easy grace around the horses, the way he smiled when he saw her approaching, the way his laugh made her feel light and happy in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. December brought holiday preparations and brutally cold weather. Olivia invited Xavier to share Christmas dinner at the main house, and she spent far more time than necessary preparing a feast of roasted chicken, potatoes, vegetables from her root cellar, and an apple pie made from her mother's recipe. Xavier showed up with his hair slicked back and wearing a clean shirt, looking nervous and pleased all at once. "I made you something," he said, handing her a wrapped package as she let him in from the cold. Olivia opened it to find a beautifully carved wooden box, small enough to hold in her palm, with her initials inlaid on the lid in a darker wood. "Xavier, this is beautiful. When did you find time to make this?" "Evenings, when I should have been sleeping," he admitted with a grin. "I wanted to thank you properly for taking a chance on me. You changed my life, Olivia. I want you to know that." "You changed mine too," she replied, running her fingers over the smooth wood. more than you probably realize. They ate dinner by candlelight, and Xavier told stories about Christmases from his childhood in Ohio, about his father's terrible singing voice and his mother's traditional German cookies. Olivia shared memories of her mother decorating the house with pine boughs and her father's insistence on reading the Christmas story from their family Bible every year. "You still have the Bible?" Xavier asked. "Of course. It is one of my most precious possessions." Olivia retrieved it from the shelf and showed him the careful notations of births and deaths on the family page. "Someday I hope to add more entries here. Children, grandchildren, a legacy that continues beyond me." "That is a good dream," Xavier said softly. "Everyone should have family to carry on their memory." "You want children someday?" Olivia asked, then immediately felt foolish for such a personal question, but Xavier did not seem to mind. "I do," he said. "I want what my parents almost had. A home, a family, a place in the world that matters. I want to build something lasting." "Then I hope you get it," Olivia said, though the words felt hollow, because she was beginning to realize that what she wanted was for Xavier to build that life here with her. But saying so felt too bold, too presumptuous. He worked for her, after all. Any declaration of deeper feelings could put him in an impossible position. As January 1885 arrived with deep snowdrifts and howling winds, the ranch work slowed to essential chores only. Olivia found herself spending more time in the house, catching up on bookkeeping and planning for spring. Xavier joined her many evenings, and they would sit by the fire, talking or reading or simply enjoying the comfortable silence that had developed between them. "I got a letter today," Xavier said one evening in mid-January. "From the manager of the Clearwater Ranch up near Great Falls. One of the hands I worked with at Riverside is there now, and he recommended me for a foreman position that just opened up. They are offering $45 a month plus housing." Olivia felt her stomach drop. "That is a good offer." "It is," Xavier agreed. He was watching her carefully. "It is the kind of position I was looking for when I first arrived here. A chance to prove myself, to save real money, to eventually afford land of my own." "You should take it," Olivia forced herself to say, even though the words tasted like ash. "That is too good an opportunity to pass up." "Is it?" Xavier asked quietly. "Because I find myself not wanting to leave." Olivia's heart raced. "Xavier, I know I should not say this," he interrupted, leaning forward in his chair. "I know it is not appropriate given our situation, but I cannot keep pretending I do not feel what I feel. Somewhere over these past months, this job stopped being just a job. You stopped being just my employer. I look forward to seeing you every morning. I find excuses to come up to the house in the evenings. I think about you when I should be concentrating on work. And the thought of leaving, of going to Clearwater Ranch or anywhere else, makes me miserable because it would mean leaving you." Olivia stood up, her hands trembling. "You should not say things like that unless you mean them." Xavier stood as well, moving closer. "I mean every word. I am falling in love with you, Olivia. Maybe I have been since that first night when you looked at an exhausted stranger in your barn and decided to trust him. When you said I belonged here, I started to believe it was true." "It is true," Olivia whispered. "You do belong here. And I do not want you to leave. Not for Clearwater Ranch, not for anywhere. Because I am falling in love with you too, and I cannot imagine running this ranch without you anymore. I do not want to imagine it." Xavier reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands. "Are you sure?" "Because I have nothing to offer you except hard work and a heart that is completely yours. I do not have land or money or anything that people would consider a proper match for a woman like you. A woman like me needs a partner who understands this life, who loves it the way I do, who can work beside me and build something lasting. Olivia replied, covering his hands with her own. That is you, Xavier. That has been you from the beginning. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and Olivia felt something settle into place in her heart, a rightness she had been seeking without even knowing it. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. So I am turning down the Clearwater offer, Xavier said, grinning. I certainly hope so, Olivia replied, because I have a better offer for you, a partnership, a real one, not just in the work but in everything. We build this ranch together, we share the profits, we make all the decisions together, and when we are ready, we make it official in every way. Xavier's eyes widened. Are you proposing a business partnership or something more? Both, Olivia said boldly. I am proposing that we become partners in business and eventually partners in life. I know we should probably wait a more respectable amount of time, court properly, do everything society says we should do. But I know what I want, and I think you do too. I absolutely do, Xavier confirmed, pulling her close again. Though I should probably be the one doing the proposing when the time comes. I may not be traditional about much, but I want to do that part right. I can live with that, Olivia agreed, resting her head against his chest and listening to his heartbeat. As long as the answer is yes. The answer will always be yes, Xavier promised. They told no one of their understanding at first, simply moving forward with quiet certainty. Xavier moved his belongings from the cabin to the main house in early February, and if any of the neighbors who occasionally stopped by noticed, they had the good grace not to comment. Olivia and Xavier worked together with new energy, planning improvements for the spring, and discussing how to implement Xavier's idea of focusing on breeding quality cattle. In March, Xavier rode into Helena and returned with a simple gold band. That evening, he took Olivia's hand as they stood on the porch watching the sunset. I do not have a fancy speech prepared, he said. I am not good with eloquent words, but I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. You gave me a home when I had nowhere else to go. You gave me purpose when I was lost. You gave me hope for a future I had stopped believing in. Will you marry me, Olivia Lancaster? Will you let me spend the rest of my life being your partner in every possible way? Yes, Olivia said through happy tears. Yes, absolutely yes. They married in April at the small church in Helena, with a handful of neighbors as witnesses and the minister's wife playing the piano. Olivia wore her mother's ivory dress, carefully preserved in cedar and miraculously still fitting. Xavier wore a new suit, the first he had owned in years, purchased with money he had been saving for emergencies but decided was better spent on looking proper for his wedding. You are sure about this? He whispered as they stood at the altar. Once we do this, you are stuck with me. I am counting on it, Olivia whispered back, squeezing his hand. The minister pronounced them husband and wife, and when Xavier kissed her, Olivia felt the last pieces of her life click into place. This was right. This was what she had been waiting for without knowing it. They returned to the ranch as Mr. and Mrs. Xavier Thompson, though Olivia kept the Lancaster name for business purposes since it was already established. Xavier insisted they have the legal papers drawn up making them true partners in the ranch, equal owners of everything. Some of their neighbors thought he was foolish to not simply take control as was traditional, but Xavier refused. I did not marry you to take what is yours, he told Olivia. I married you to build something together. That means equal partnership, equal say, equal ownership. I will not have it any other way. Their first spring and summer as a married couple were filled with hard work and simple joys. They rose before dawn to handle the cattle, repaired buildings and fences, planted a larger vegetable garden, and began the careful process of evaluating their herd for breeding quality. Xavier proved to have an exceptional eye for cattle, able to spot strengths and weaknesses that would affect offspring quality. By July, they had identified their best breeding stock and made plans to acquire a superior bull from a rancher near Bozeman who had a reputation for excellent bloodlines. "This will take most of our savings," Olivia said, studying the figures in their account book. "Are we sure about this?" "We are investing in our future," Xavier replied. "In 2 years, we will have calves from this bull that will bring premium prices. In 5 years, we will have established a reputation that will make this ranch known throughout the territory. Trust me on this." Olivia did trust him, and in late August they traveled to Bozeman to complete the purchase. The bull was magnificent, a massive red Hereford with perfect conformation and a documented lineage of producing strong, fast-growing offspring. They named him Goliath, and Xavier treated the animal with the care and attention usually reserved for champions. "You do realize you talk to that bull more than you talk to me some days," Olivia teased one morning as she watched Xavier checking Goliath's hooves and murmuring encouragement to the massive animal. "Goliath is our future prosperity," Xavier replied with a grin. "He deserves respect and attention. But you, my beautiful wife, deserve something more." He straightened and pulled her close, kissing her soundly despite the early hour and the work waiting for them. "You deserve every bit of love I have to give, and I plan to spend the rest of my life proving it." "You are a shameless romantic," Olivia said, laughing. "Only with you," Xavier assured her. "Everyone else thinks I am all business." As autumn arrived and the leaves turned gold and scarlet, Olivia realized she had not had her monthly courses in some time. She waited another few weeks to be certain before telling Xavier, choosing a quiet evening after supper when they were sitting together on the porch. "I have news," she said, trying to keep her voice calm though her heart was racing. "I think I am going to have a baby." Xavier froze, his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Then he carefully set it down and turned to face her fully. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without a doctor confirming it, but all the signs are there, and I know my own body." A slow smile spread across Xavier's face, growing wider until he looked like he might burst with joy. "We are going to have a baby. We are going to be parents." He pulled her into his arms, holding her with careful tenderness as though she might break. "This is the best news. This is everything." "You are happy then?" Olivia asked, though his reaction made the question unnecessary. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Xavier said, pulling back to look at her with shining eyes. "You have given me everything, Olivia. A home, a purpose, a partnership, love, and now a child. I do not know what I did to deserve all this, but I swear I will spend every day trying to be worthy of it." "You already are," Olivia assured him. "You have been from the beginning." They made the trip into Helena to see the doctor, who confirmed that Olivia was indeed pregnant and due sometime in late May or early June. Dr. Wilson, an older man who had known Olivia's father, seemed pleased by the news. "It will be good to have new life at the Lancaster ranch," he said. "Your father would have been thrilled to know his legacy would continue. And you have chosen a good man, Mrs. Thompson. I can tell by the way he looks at you." "I did choose well," Olivia agreed, glancing at Xavier, who sat beside her looking proud and protective all at once. The winter of 1885 into 1886 was relatively mild, which was fortunate given Olivia's condition. Xavier became almost comically protective, insisting on doing any heavy lifting and worrying whenever she looked the slightest bit tired. Olivia tolerated his hovering with good humor, understanding it came from love even when it became excessive. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she reminded him for the 10th time when he tried to stop her from carrying a basket of laundry. I know, but I cannot help worrying, Xavier replied. You are carrying our child. Everything in me wants to protect you both. Then protect us by letting me maintain some normalcy, Olivia said gently. I need to keep active, and I am not so far along that I cannot do normal tasks. I promise I will tell you if something feels wrong. Xavier reluctantly agreed, though Olivia caught him watching her with concern throughout the day. As her pregnancy progressed and her belly grew round, he would often place his hand on her stomach in the evenings, marveling at the feeling of the baby moving. There, did you feel that? Olivia would say when the baby kicked particularly hard. Your son or daughter is quite active. I hope the baby has your determination and intelligence, Xavier said one night as they lay in bed with his hand resting on her stomach. And maybe my height, so we have a tall family. I hope the baby has your kindness and work ethic, Olivia replied. And my father's sense of humor. He could always make people laugh. Tell me more about him, Xavier requested. I wish I could have met him. Olivia spent the evening sharing stories about her father, about his adventures during the gold rush, his determination to build something lasting, his gentle way with horses, and his pride in the ranch he had created. Xavier listened intently, and Olivia realized he was memorizing these stories to share with their child someday, ensuring that William Lancaster's memory would live on through another generation. Spring arrived with warming temperatures and newborn calves dotting the pastures. Several of the cows had been bred to Goliath the previous year, and Xavier's excitement over the quality of the offspring was almost equal to his excitement about their impending baby. Look at the conformation on this one, he said, pointing to a particularly robust calf. Strong legs, good chest depth, excellent overall structure. This is exactly what I was hoping for. Give it a few years and buyers will be competing for Lancaster Thompson breeding stock. Lancaster Thompson? Olivia asked with a smile. Well, it is both our ranch now, Xavier said. I thought we should acknowledge both names in our business, unless you prefer something else. No, I like it, Olivia replied. Lancaster Thompson Ranch. It has a good sound to it. As May arrived and Olivia's due date approached, Xavier became increasingly anxious. He had sent for Dr. Wilson weeks in advance, arranging for the doctor to stay at a neighboring ranch so he could be summoned quickly when Olivia went into labor. He had prepared the bedroom with extra linens, ensured they had plenty of water and fuel, and generally acted like a man preparing for battle rather than birth. You need to calm down, Olivia told him, as she caught him checking their supplies for the third time in one day. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I will be fine. I know, Xavier ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Olivia had come to recognize as a sign of his stress. I cannot lose you. You are everything to me. If anything went wrong, nothing is going to go wrong, Olivia said firmly, taking his hands in hers. I am healthy, the baby is active, and we have a good doctor ready to help. You need to trust that this will work out. On a warm evening in late May, Olivia's labor began. Xavier rode hard to the neighboring ranch to fetch Dr. Wilson while Mrs. Henderson, their nearest neighbor, stayed with Olivia. The labor was long, lasting through the night and into the next day, and Xavier paced the floor of the main room like a caged animal, jumping every time Olivia cried out. This is normal, Dr. Wilson assured him during one of his brief appearances from the bedroom. She is doing well. Be patient. Patience had never been harder. Xavier prayed more in those hours than he had in his entire life, making bargains with God and promising anything if only Olivia and the baby would be safe. Finally, as the sun reached its zenith, a baby's cry rang through the house. Dr. Wilson emerged a few minutes later, smiling. You have a son, Mr. Thompson, a healthy, strong boy, and your wife is tired but well." Xavier nearly collapsed with relief. "Can I see them? Give Mrs. Henderson a few more minutes to help clean up, then yes." When Xavier finally entered the bedroom, he found Olivia propped up against pillows, looking exhausted but radiant with a tiny bundle cradled in her arms. She looked up when he entered, and her smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Xavier approached as though walking on sacred ground. He looked down at the red, wrinkled face of his newborn son and felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. The baby had a shock of dark hair and tiny fists that waved in the air, already protesting his arrival into the world. "He is perfect," Xavier whispered, reaching out to carefully touch the baby's hand. Tiny fingers immediately wrapped around his much larger one, gripping with surprising strength. "He is absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" Olivia asked. "I thought perhaps William, after my father." "William Xavier Thompson," Xavier said, trying out the name. "I like it. He can carry on your father's legacy." "William Xavier Lancaster Thompson," Olivia corrected with a smile. "We use both names, remember." "That is quite a mouthful for such a small person," Xavier said, grinning. "But I love it." Baby William, or Will as they quickly began calling him, proved to be a healthy, hungry infant who kept his parents busy around the clock. Xavier took to fatherhood with the same dedication he brought to everything. Changing diapers without complaint, walking the floor at night when Will was fussy, and gazing at his son with an expression of wonder that made Olivia fall in love with him all over again. "I never knew I could feel this way," Xavier admitted one night as he held Will, the baby finally sleeping after a particularly fussy evening. "Like my heart is walking around outside my body. I would do anything for him, for both of you." "I know," Olivia said, resting her head on Xavier's shoulder as they both watched their son sleep. "That is what love does. It expands us, makes us capable of more than we ever thought possible." As summer progressed, they fell into new rhythms that balanced ranch work with caring for an infant. Mrs. Henderson proved invaluable, often stopping by to help with Will so Olivia could assist Xavier with critical ranch tasks. The Lancaster Thompson Ranch continued to prosper, with several ranchers from neighboring territories expressing interest in breeding stock for the following year. "We should start building additional pastures," Xavier suggested one evening as they reviewed their accounts. "If we are going to sell breeding animals, we need space to keep them separated and showcase them properly for buyers. And we should think about building a better barn, something that reflects the quality of our operation." "That will take significant capital," Olivia noted. "True, but look at these numbers." Xavier pointed to their projected income. "If even half the interested parties follow through, we will have more than enough. We are building something real here, Olivia, something that will last for generations." They hired 2 additional hands that fall, young men from Helena who were eager to learn ranching and did not mind working for a couple who did things their own way. Xavier trained them carefully, passing on the knowledge he had accumulated over years of experience. Olivia found herself spending more time on the business side of operations, corresponding with potential buyers, and keeping meticulous records of bloodlines and breeding outcomes. "You are becoming quite the businesswoman," Xavier observed one evening, watching her draft a letter to a rancher in Wyoming who wanted to discuss purchasing a bull. "Someone has to handle the paperwork," Olivia replied. "Besides, I enjoy it. Negotiating prices, establishing our reputation, building relationships with other ranchers, it is satisfying in a different way than the physical work of ranching." "We make a good team," Xavier said, coming to stand behind her chair and resting his hands on her shoulders. You handle the business, I handle the livestock, and together we are building something neither of us could have created alone. Will's first birthday arrived in May 1887, and they celebrated with a small gathering of neighbors and friends. The baby, now a toddling, babbling little boy with his father's gray eyes and his mother's determined expression, delighted everyone by taking several wobbly steps before falling into Xavier's waiting arms. "He is going to be running all over this ranch before we know it," Mrs. Henderson predicted. "You will need eyes in the back of your head to keep up with him." "I can hardly wait," Xavier said, lifting Will high and making the boy squeal with laughter. "Someday he will help us with the cattle and horses, the third generation of this ranch." "Do not rush him," Olivia said, but she was smiling. Watching Xavier with their son filled her with a contentment she had never imagined possible. This life they had built together, it was everything she had ever wanted and more. That summer, a wealthy rancher from Chicago traveled to Montana specifically to visit the Lancaster Thompson Ranch, having heard about their breeding program through various cattlemen's associations. Jerome Whitmore was a heavy-set man in his 50s who carried himself with the confidence of someone used to getting what he wanted. He spent 2 days examining their cattle, asking detailed questions, and taking extensive notes. "Your operation is impressive," he said finally, sitting with Xavier and Olivia on their porch while Will played at their feet. "I am prepared to offer you $500 for 3 of your yearling bulls, specifically the ones sired by Goliath from your best cows." Xavier and Olivia exchanged glances. $500 was more than they had dared hope for, but Xavier, always the shrewd negotiator, did not immediately accept. "Those are exceptional animals," he said carefully. "They represent the best of what we have been working to achieve." 500 seems low for 3 bulls of that quality, especially given their proven bloodlines. Whitmore raised an eyebrow. "What did you have in mind?" 700 for the 3, and we provide documentation of their lineage going back 3 generations, plus breeding advice and ongoing consultation if you have questions," Xavier countered. 650, final offer," Whitmore said. Xavier looked at Olivia, who gave a small nod. "Done," Xavier said, extending his hand. After Whitmore left with his purchase and they had deposited his bank draft, Olivia threw her arms around Xavier in pure joy. $650. Do you know what this means?" "It means we can build that new barn and still have money left for expanding the herd," Xavier replied, spinning her around. "It means our gamble on Goliath paid off. It means we are officially successful." "It means you were right," Olivia said, kissing him soundly. "Your vision, your plan, it worked exactly as you said it would." "Our vision," Xavier corrected. "Our plan. I could not have done any of this without you, Olivia. You took a chance on a desperate cowboy in your barn and gave him the opportunity to prove himself. Everything good in my life comes from that night." They used the money wisely, constructing a large barn with proper stalls and storage, expanding their pastures, and purchasing 6 additional bred cows from a reputable breeder. By the winter of 1887, the Lancaster Thompson Ranch was recognized throughout Montana Territory as a premier source of quality cattle. Orders for breeding stock were already being placed for the following year, and Xavier had implemented a waiting list to ensure they could properly manage demand. "We should think about expanding into horses as well," Xavier suggested one snowy evening as they reviewed their plans for the coming year. "There is always a market for good working horses, and we have the knowledge and space to breed quality animals." "Do you think we can handle both cattle and horses?" Olivia asked. "Not immediately, but in another year or 2, once we have the cattle operation running smoothly with our hired hands, yes. We could start small, just a few good mares and a quality stallion, build from there. You are always thinking 5 steps ahead, Olivia said fondly. I learned from the best, Xavier replied, gesturing at the ledgers and notes that Olivia had been keeping. You taught me to document everything, plan carefully, and think long-term. I am just applying those lessons. In the spring of 1888, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. Will was nearly 3 years old now, running around the ranch and chattering constantly in a mixture of real words and his own invented language. Xavier was delighted at the prospect of another child, though he immediately returned to his protective hovering. I survived the first pregnancy, Olivia reminded him. I will survive this one too. I know, but that does not mean I will not worry, Xavier replied. It is my job as your husband to worry. Your job as my husband is to run this ranch with me and love me, Olivia corrected. The worrying is optional. This pregnancy seemed easier than the first, or perhaps Olivia simply knew better what to expect. She continued working through most of it, only slowing down in the final weeks before her due date. Xavier had expanded his role in the actual ranching operations, now overseeing not just the breeding program but also training the hired hands and managing daily operations. He was, in every sense, a full partner in the business. Their second child, a daughter, was born in January 1889 during a howling snowstorm that kept Dr. Wilson from arriving until after the birth. Fortunately, Mrs. Henderson had experience with birthing babies and helped Olivia through the delivery with calm competence. By the time the doctor finally struggled through the snowdrifts to reach the ranch, mother and baby were both resting comfortably. You have a daughter, Olivia told Xavier, holding the tiny girl who had her mother's dark hair and delicate features. What should we name her? What about Rose? Xavier suggested. After your mother, I know she was Rosemary. Rosemary Thompson, Olivia said, trying it out. Rosemary Lancaster Thompson, she corrected with a smile. That works too, Xavier agreed, carefully taking his daughter into his arms. Rose blinked up at him with unfocused newborn eyes, and Xavier felt his heart melt. Hello, little Rose. I am your father, and I promise to protect you and love you and make sure you grow up knowing how special you are. Will was initially suspicious of his new sister, not understanding why this crying, wrinkled creature was getting so much attention. But Xavier made a point of including him in caring for Rose, letting him help with small tasks, and praising him for being a good big brother. Within weeks, Will had decided that Rose was acceptable and appointed himself her protector, running to alert his parents whenever she cried. You have good children, Mrs. Henderson observed one afternoon, watching Will carefully pat Rose's hand while she slept in her cradle. They will grow up to be good people, I can tell. I hope so, Olivia said. We are certainly trying to raise them right, with love and responsibility and an understanding of hard work. They have good examples in you and Xavier, Mrs. Henderson replied. That young man has turned out to be quite the blessing, has he not? I remember when you first hired him, some of the neighbors questioned your judgment. But look at what you have built together. He is the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia said simply. Apart from the children, of course, but Xavier, he makes everything better, every challenge easier, every joy sweeter. I cannot imagine my life without him now. The years that followed were full and rich, marked by the steady growth of both the ranch and the family. The Lancaster Thompson Ranch continued to prosper, gaining a reputation that extended beyond Montana territory. Xavier's breeding program produced consistently excellent cattle, and they eventually did expand into horses as planned, developing a line of sturdy working animals perfect for ranch use. Will grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved following his father around the ranch, peppering him with endless questions about cattle and horses and every aspect of ranching. Xavier answered every question with patience, recognizing his son's genuine interest and nurturing it carefully. Rose, meanwhile, proved to have her mother's head for numbers and her father's eye for animals, able to spot a quality calf or foal at a glance even as a young child. In 1892, Olivia gave birth to a third child, another son they named James after Xavier's father. James was a cheerful, adventurous baby who seemed determined to keep his parents on their toes from the moment he could crawl. Xavier joked that they had been blessed with 3 children who perfectly embodied different aspects of ranching: Will's careful planning, Rose's sharp assessment, and James's fearless determination. "We are going to need to expand the house," Xavier said one evening as he surveyed their increasingly crowded living space. 3 children in 1 bedroom is working for now, but it will not be practical much longer. "I have been thinking the same thing," Olivia agreed. "What if we added a second story? We could create separate rooms for the boys and Rose, plus have a proper guest room." They spent the winter planning the expansion and began construction in the spring. Xavier and their hired hands did most of the work themselves, with Olivia managing the household and ranch affairs while also keeping a close eye on the progress. By autumn, the house had been transformed into a spacious 2-story home with room for their growing family and visitors. "Your father would be proud," Xavier told Olivia as they stood in the yard looking at the completed expansion. "Look at everything you have built here, everything we have built together." "He would be proud of you too," Olivia replied, taking his hand. "You took a struggling ranch and turned it into one of the most respected operations in Montana." "You did that, Xavier." "We did that," Xavier corrected. "Always we, Olivia. Everything good that has happened here has been because of both of us working together." As Montana achieved statehood in 1889 and moved into the 1890s, the Lancaster-Thompson Ranch stood as a testament to what could be accomplished through hard work, smart planning, and genuine partnership. They weathered droughts and hard winters, managed difficult calving seasons and equipment breakdowns, navigated market fluctuations and changing regulations. Through it all, Xavier and Olivia remained united, facing every challenge together. One evening in the summer of 1895, they sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard as the sun set behind the mountains. Will was 11 now, tall and gangly, but showing signs of the man he would become. Rose, 6 years old, was organizing some complicated game that involved sticks and rocks and rules only she fully understood. James, 3, was mostly just running in circles and laughing. "You ever think about that night in the barn?" Xavier asked, his hand resting on Olivia's. "When you found me sleeping in the hay and could have just run me off?" "I think about it often," Olivia admitted. "I wonder what would have happened if I had made a different choice, if I had been more cautious, more afraid, less willing to take a chance on a stranger. I would probably be working some miserable job on a ranch where I was just another hired hand," Xavier said. "Or maybe I would have given up and done something else entirely. I certainly would not have this." He gestured at the house, the land, their children. "All of this came from your courage that night, your willingness to trust your instincts and take a risk." "My instincts told me you were someone special," Olivia said, squeezing his hand. "That you had nowhere else to go but you belonged here. I am glad I listened to them." "I had nowhere else," Xavier said softly, echoing the words he had spoken that first night. "You said I belonged here, and you made it true, Olivia. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me everything." "You gave me everything too," Olivia replied. "A partner," love, children, a future I had stopped believing was possible. We gave each other everything, Xavier. That is what makes this work. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching their children play as evening deepened into night. The ranch sprawled around them, prosperous and productive, a legacy they would someday pass to those children. But for now, it was theirs to manage and enjoy, the fruit of over a decade of hard work and mutual dedication. "We should probably get the children inside and ready for bed," Olivia said finally. "Tomorrow is going to be another long day." "Tomorrow is always a long day on a ranch," Xavier replied with a grin, "but I would not have it any other way." As they herded their protesting children inside and began the bedtime routine, Xavier caught Olivia's eye across the room and mouthed, "I love you." She smiled and mouthed it back, this private moment of connection in the chaos of family life. Later, after the children were finally asleep and they were preparing for bed themselves, Xavier pulled Olivia into his arms. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For taking a chance on a cowboy who had nowhere else to go, for building this life with me, for loving me, for everything." "Thank you for staying," Olivia replied, resting her head against his chest. "For choosing this ranch, this life, me. For being exactly the partner I needed, for loving me back." They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the lamplight, two people who had found each other by chance and built a life together by choice. Outside, the Montana night settled over the ranch, stars bright in the clear sky, cattle lowing softly in the distance, horses nickering in the barn. Everything was as it should be. The years continued their steady march forward. The children grew and developed their own personalities and interests. Will followed his father into every aspect of ranch management, learning to evaluate cattle and horses, manage breeding programs, and negotiate with buyers. By the time he was 16, Xavier was trusting him with significant responsibilities. Rose proved to be a natural with numbers and organization, taking over much of the business correspondence and record-keeping from her mother. She had a sharp mind for business and was not afraid to drive a hard bargain when selling their breeding stock. More than one buyer made the mistake of underestimating her because of her age and gender, only to find themselves agreeing to her terms anyway. James was the wild card, more interested in breaking horses and exploring the mountains than in the careful planning and documentation that fascinated his siblings. But he had a gift for understanding animals that rivaled his father's, able to calm a spooked horse or settle a nervous cow with just his presence and his voice. "We are raising quite a crew here," Xavier said proudly one evening in 1900, watching his now teenage children work together to bring in cattle from the far pasture. "They are going to make fine ranchers when we are too old and tired to do it anymore." "Speak for yourself," Olivia replied with mock indignation. "I am nowhere near too old or tired." Xavier laughed and pulled her close. "You are right. We probably have another 20 or 30 years before we need to worry about that. But it is good to know the ranch will be in capable hands whenever that time comes." Montana in 1900 was vastly different from the Montana Xavier had first encountered in 1884. Railroads crisscrossed the state, towns had grown into cities, and the wild frontier feeling had faded into something more settled and civilized. But ranching remained the backbone of the state's economy, and the Lancaster Thompson Ranch remained one of the premier operations. They had weathered economic panics and drought, blizzards and disease, all the challenges that came with ranch life. Their partnership had deepened over the years, strengthened by shared struggles and successes. They had learned to read each other's moods and thoughts, to work together with the smooth efficiency that came from years of practice. "You have any regrets?" Olivia asked Xavier one quiet evening. They were alone for once, the children having gone into Helena for a church social. About the way your life turned out, the choices you made. Xavier considered the question seriously. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had kept riding that night instead of sleeping in your barn. Where would I have ended up? What would my life have looked like? He paused, then shook his head. But no, I have no regrets. This life with you, with our children, with this ranch, it is everything I could have wanted and more. I am exactly where I am supposed to be. Good, Olivia said, snuggling closer to him on the porch swing they had added years ago. Because I cannot imagine doing this with anyone else. You are my perfect partner, Xavier Thompson. And you are mine, Olivia Lancaster Thompson, he replied, kissing the top of her head. As 1901 arrived, bringing with it a new century and new possibilities, Xavier and Olivia celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary. Their children organized a surprise party, inviting neighbors and friends from all over the county. The house was full of laughter and music, food and fellowship, a celebration of not just a marriage but a partnership that had transformed a struggling ranch into a thriving enterprise. Speech. Someone called out, and the crowd took up the chant until Xavier finally stood, pulling Olivia up beside him. I am not much good at speeches, Xavier began, and several people laughed because by now everyone knew Xavier was actually quite articulate when he chose to be. But I will say this. 15 years ago, I married the most remarkable woman I have ever known. She is smart, strong, capable, beautiful, and far too good for the likes of me. Olivia swatted his arm, but she was smiling. Together we have built something I am proud of. Not just this ranch, though that is certainly an accomplishment, but we have built a family, a home, a legacy. We have raised 3 incredible children who are going to do great things. We have created something that will last beyond us, that will matter for generations to come. And I owe all of it to the fact that Olivia took a chance on a desperate cowboy who had nowhere else to go. She looked at me and said I belonged here, and she made it true. So thank you, Olivia, for everything, for 15 years and for hopefully 50 more to come. The crowd applauded and Olivia wiped away happy tears. You are definitely better at speeches than you pretend, she whispered to Xavier. Only when the subject matter inspires me, he whispered back. The party continued late into the evening, and when everyone finally left and the children had collapsed into exhausted sleep, Xavier and Olivia stood together in the quiet house. 50 more years? Olivia asked, referencing Xavier's toast. At least, Xavier confirmed. I plan to spend the rest of my life with you, however long that may be. That sounds perfect to me, Olivia agreed. Time moved forward inexorably. Will married a schoolteacher from Helena in 1903, bringing her to live on the ranch and eventually building a house on the eastern section of the property. Rose shocked everyone by announcing she wanted to attend college, something almost unheard of for a woman at the time. Xavier and Olivia supported her decision, proud that their daughter wanted to expand her horizons even if it meant leaving the ranch for a while. James, true to form, announced at 18 that he wanted to spend a year traveling and seeing the country before settling into ranch life. Xavier, remembering his own restless youth, understood and gave his blessing. You raised them to be independent thinkers, Xavier told Olivia when she worried about their children's various adventures. We cannot be surprised when they actually think independently. I know, Olivia sighed. I am proud of them. I just worry the way any mother worries. They will be fine, Xavier assured her. They have good heads on their shoulders and our values in their hearts. Whatever they do, wherever they go, they will make us proud. He was right. Rose excelled at college, studying business and economics. and eventually returned to the ranch with new ideas for expanding their operations and marketing their breeding stock more effectively. James traveled for 18 months, worked on ranches from Texas to Wyoming, and came home with a broader perspective and a renewed appreciation for the Lancaster Thompson Ranch. He settled into training horses, developing a reputation for his almost magical ability to work with difficult animals. Will and his wife Eleanor had 3 children of their own, the 4th generation to be connected to the ranch. Xavier became a grandfather who spoiled his grandchildren shamelessly, though he still maintained high standards when teaching them about ranching. "You are getting soft in your old age," Olivia teased, watching Xavier give in to his youngest grandchild's plea for a story when he should have been checking the cattle. "I am not old," Xavier protested. He was 50 years old, his hair going gray but his body still strong from years of ranch work. "And I am not soft. I am just enjoying the privileges of being a grandfather." "If you say so," Olivia replied, but she was smiling. She loved seeing Xavier with their grandchildren, loved the gentleness and patience he showed them, loved knowing that the family they had created was continuing to grow and thrive. In 1910, they celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary, a silver milestone that seemed almost impossible to believe. Where had the years gone? Xavier looked at Olivia, now 48 years old and still beautiful in his eyes, and marveled at everything they had experienced together. 25 years, he said that evening as they took a rare quiet moment alone. "Do you remember how nervous I was on our wedding day?" "You hid it well," Olivia replied. "Though I was terrified, I kept thinking, what if I was making a mistake? What if this did not work out? And now I know it was the best decision I ever made," Olivia said firmly. "Marrying you, making you my partner in every sense, building this life together, I would not change a single thing." "Neither would I," Xavier agreed, "though I might have liked to meet you earlier, had more years together." "We have had 25 good years, and we will have many more," Olivia assured him. "We are both healthy, the ranch is thriving, our children are successful, and our grandchildren are growing up strong. We have been incredibly blessed." "Because you found a cowboy asleep in your barn and gave him a chance," Xavier said, bringing the conversation back to where it had all begun. "Because that cowboy turned out to be exactly what I needed," Olivia corrected. "The right person at the right time in the right place." "You belonged here, Xavier. From that very first night, you belonged here." As the years continued into the 1910s, Xavier and Olivia gradually stepped back from day-to-day ranch operations, turning more responsibility over to their children. Will managed the cattle breeding program, Rose handled all business affairs, and James ran the horse operation. Together, the 3 siblings continued to build on the foundation their parents had established. Xavier and Olivia had more time for themselves, and they used it to travel, visiting Rose when she eventually married and settled in Bozeman, seeing James compete in horse shows across the region, and taking trips they had never had time for when they were younger. But they always returned to the ranch, to the home they had built together. "This is where I want to be," Xavier said every time they came back, standing on the porch and surveying the land that had been his salvation and his life's work. "This is where you belong," Olivia always replied, echoing the words she had spoken that first night. On a warm summer evening in 1920, they sat together on that same porch, now both in their 60s but still vital and engaged with life. Their grandchildren ran around the yard while their children managed various ranch tasks. The sun was setting behind the mountains in a spectacular display of orange and gold, painting the entire valley in warm light. 36 years since that night in the barn, Xavier mused. "Can you believe it? Sometimes it feels like yesterday, Olivia replied. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Both are true, I suppose. You ever wonder what the young woman who found a stranger in her barn would think if she could see all this? Xavier gestured at the thriving ranch, the multiple buildings, the growing herd, their extended family. I think she would be amazed, Olivia said thoughtfully. And grateful. And proud. She was so lonely back then, so overwhelmed by everything she had to do alone. She could not have imagined finding a partner like you, building a life like this. And what about the young man who fell asleep in that barn? Olivia asked. What would he think? He would think he was the luckiest man alive, Xavier replied immediately. He was lost, desperate, with no real hope for the future. And then an angel appeared with a lantern and told him he belonged. Everything good in his life came from that moment. We saved each other, Olivia said softly. You needed a home and I needed a partner. We needed each other, and somehow we found each other at exactly the right time. The best kind of love story, Xavier agreed, pulling her close. Two people who complete each other, who make each other better, who build something together that neither could have built alone. They sat in peaceful silence as evening deepened into night, watching their family, their legacy, living and thriving around them. The ranch that Olivia's father had started, that she had maintained alone for 2 difficult years, that she and Xavier had built into something remarkable together. It would continue long after they were gone. Their children would pass it to their grandchildren, and those grandchildren to their children, each generation adding their own contributions to the foundation that had been laid. No regrets? Olivia asked, a question they had asked each other many times over the years. Not a single one, Xavier confirmed. You, none, Olivia said firmly. This life with you, it is everything I could have wanted, everything I did not even know to want. You made it all possible, Xavier. We made it possible, Xavier corrected, as he always did. Together, always together. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, their youngest grandchild, a 5-year-old boy named after Xavier's father James, came running up to the porch. Grandpa, Grandma, Papa says to come see the new foal that was just born. Xavier and Olivia exchanged smiles. Even in their 60s, they could not resist the lure of new life on the ranch. They stood, holding hands, and followed their grandson to the barn where, indeed, a beautiful chestnut foal was taking its first wobbly steps. What should we name her? James asked his parents. Hope, Olivia said immediately. Because that is what new life always brings. Hope for the future. Hope, Xavier repeated approvingly. I like it. That is exactly what you brought me, Olivia, all those years ago. Hope when I had none. And you brought me love when I had forgotten what it felt like, Olivia replied. Together we built hope and love into everything around us. They stood in the barn, surrounded by their family, watching the foal gain confidence with each passing minute. This was their legacy. Not just land and cattle and horses, but love, partnership, family, and the knowledge that two people working together could build something that would endure. Years continued to pass, bringing both joys and sorrows. They lost Mrs. Henderson, their loyal neighbor and friend, in 1923. Xavier's health began to show its age in his late 60s, the years of hard physical labor taking their toll on his joints and back. But his mind remained sharp, and he continued to offer guidance and advice to his children and grandchildren. Olivia developed some arthritis, but refused to let it slow her down significantly. She still kept her hand in the ranch's business affairs, still made important decisions alongside Xavier, still ran the household with efficient grace. We are getting old, Xavier observed one morning in 1925 as he moved more slowly than usual getting out of bed. Speak for yourself, Olivia retorted, though she was moving carefully too. I prefer to think we are aging gracefully." "Is that what we are calling it?" Xavier asked with a grin. Despite their advancing age, they remained active and engaged. They celebrated their 40th anniversary in 1926 with a huge gathering attended by people from all over Montana. Former buyers, old friends, neighbors, family members, all came to honor the couple who had built one of the most respected ranches in the state. 40 years, Xavier said in his toast, his voice still strong despite his age. 40 years with the woman who saved my life, who gave me purpose, who made me better than I ever could have been alone. 40 years of partnership, love, family, and hard work. I would not trade a single day of it. Even the hard days, someone called out, and everyone laughed. "Especially the hard days," Xavier replied, "because those were the days that tested us, that proved our partnership could handle anything. Those were the days that showed us what we were made of together." Olivia stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. 40 years ago, I found a cowboy asleep in my barn," she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "He said he had nowhere else to go. I told him he belonged here. I had no idea how true those words would become, how deeply he would root himself into my heart and my life. Xavier Thompson is the best thing that ever happened to me, and I thank God every day for that night when he stumbled into my barn and into my life." The party went late into the night, filled with music and dancing and stories. Their grandchildren, now teenagers and young adults, heard tales about their grandparents they had never known before. Friends shared memories of Xavier and Olivia's early days, the struggles they had overcome, the success they had built. "You two are an inspiration," one elderly rancher told them as the evening wound down. "In a world where so many marriages fail, where partnerships crumble at the first real challenge, you have shown what it means to truly commit to another person. You have shown what can be built when two people work together toward a common goal. My wife and I have tried to model our own marriage on your example. We have just tried to love each other and support each other," Xavier said humbly. "That is all any couple can do." "But you have done it so well," the rancher replied. "That is what makes the difference." As they finally retired for the night, exhausted but happy, Xavier pulled Olivia close in their bed. "Thank you," he whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Olivia asked, though she thought she knew. "For 40 years, for every day, for loving me, believing in me, building this life with me, for taking a chance on a desperate cowboy who had nowhere else to go, for making me believe I belonged, for everything." "Thank you for staying," Olivia whispered back. "For choosing this ranch, this life, me. For being my partner in every possible way. For giving me children and grandchildren and a life richer than I ever imagined. For loving me back. For everything." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms. Two people who had found each other by chance and had built an extraordinary life through choice, commitment, and love. The final years were gentle ones. Xavier and Olivia spent their days mostly on the porch, watching their grandchildren and great-grandchildren play, offering advice when asked, but trusting their children to run the ranch. Will had taken over as primary manager, with Rose handling business affairs and James managing the horses. The fourth generation was already starting to take on responsibilities, ensuring the ranch would continue. Xavier passed away peacefully in his sleep in the winter of 1930 at the age of 71. Olivia woke to find him beside her, looking peaceful, his hand still holding hers even in death. She sat with him for a long time, remembering their life together, grateful for every moment they had shared. At his funeral, attended by hundreds of people whose lives he had touched, Olivia spoke about the cowboy she had found in her barn 46 years earlier. He said he had nowhere else to go. she told the gathered crowd, her voice strong despite her grief. "I told him he belonged here, and he did belong. He belonged to this land, to this ranch, to me. He took a desperate situation and turned it into something beautiful. He took my struggling ranch and helped build it into something that will last for generations. He took my lonely life and filled it with love and family and joy. Xavier Thompson was the best man I ever knew, and I am grateful for every single day we had together." Olivia lived another 3 years, staying active and engaged with the ranch until the end. She passed away in the spring of 1933 at the age of 71, the same age Xavier had been. Her children found her in the garden she had planted decades ago, a peaceful smile on her face. They buried her next to Xavier on a hillside overlooking the ranch, where they could watch over the land they had built together. The headstones were simple, but the legacy they left behind was anything but. The Lancaster Thompson Ranch continued to thrive, passed down through generations, each one building on the foundation that Olivia and Xavier had established. Years later, when Will was old and telling stories to his great-grandchildren, he would always return to the same tale. "Your great-grandmother found your great-grandfather asleep in the barn," he would say. "He was a stranger, desperate and alone. She could have run him off, but instead she saw something in him. She gave him a job, then a partnership, then her heart. Together they built all of this." He would gesture at the thriving ranch spread before them. "They showed us what real partnership looks like, what real love looks like. They showed us that sometimes the best things in life come from taking a chance on someone, from seeing potential where others see only risk, from believing that love and hard work can build something that lasts forever." Did they really love each other that much? A child would inevitably ask. "More than you can imagine," Will would always reply. "They were two parts of one whole, incomplete without each other, perfect together. That is the kind of love we should all hope to find." And so the story was passed down, generation after generation, of the woman who found a cowboy asleep in her barn, the cowboy who said he had nowhere else to go, and the woman who replied that he belonged there. It became the founding myth of the Lancaster Thompson Ranch, a reminder that the greatest things in life often begin with a simple act of kindness, a willingness to take a chance, and the courage to believe that two people working together can build something that will last forever. The ranch itself stood as a monument to their love and partnership, still operating well into the 21st century, still producing quality cattle and horses, still known throughout Montana and beyond. Every building they had constructed, every pasture they had cleared, every fence they had built, it all remained, a physical manifestation of what can be accomplished when two people truly commit to each other and to a shared vision. But more than the physical legacy, more than the land and the cattle and the successful business, what Xavier and Olivia really left behind was a model of what marriage and partnership could be at its best. They showed their children and grandchildren, and all who knew them, that real love is not just romance and passion, though they had both. Real love is choosing each other every day, working together through challenges, celebrating successes together, building a life that honors both partners equally. They showed that a woman could be strong and independent while still welcoming a partner into her life. They showed that a man could be supportive and helpful without diminishing his wife's strength. They showed that true partnership means neither person loses themselves, but rather both people become more than they could have been alone. Their story began with Chance, a desperate cowboy seeking shelter, a cautious woman offering kindness, but it became something deliberate and intentional and beautiful. They chose each other. They chose to build together. They chose love and commitment and partnership every single day for 46 years. And in the end, that choice, repeated daily through good times and bad, through challenges and triumphs, through the ordinary and the extraordinary moments that make up a life, that choice was what made their story one worth remembering, worth retelling, worth honoring for generations to come. The cowboy had nowhere else to go. The woman said he belonged, and together they built a love story for the ages.